Stonehurst Asylum follows a young doctor who begins work at the titular institution only to discover there's been a recent change of staff. Spooky. It's the latest film from director Brad Anderson, whose Vanishing on 7th Street I watched recently and found, to be honest with you, pretty lacking, but hopefully you've seen that video already, so then you'll know. If you haven't, you can always go back and watch it if you'd like, because there's a link in the bio. You can have a look down there, and then you'll know. Heading into Stonehurst Asylum, I had a lot of hope. For one thing, the cast is amazing. They've got Jim Sturgess, you've got Kate Beckinsale, and most importantly, you've got Mr. Michael Caine and Ben Kingsley in the two kind of opposing roles of the two different villains. And on top of that, it's based on a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, just one of my favourite writers. So this could be much better than the boring Vanishing on 7th Street. The first 30 minutes of the film are really compelling. Beckinsale shows a level of acting she hasn't shown for quite some time, playing this society woman who's obviously in this horribly destructive, abusive relationship and suffering from what's basically just her having massive anxiety. They call it hysteria because it's 19th century medicine and women don't have any rights. Not that that's particularly changed. And she plays it with this kind of frail courage in a strange way. She's someone who is completely intellectually believable as somebody who's suffering from that disease, which is just not something I expected to see in a film that's kind of schlocky, ultimately. And uncomfortably in love with her, we have the ever-cool Jim Sturgess, who plays her doctor, the new young doctor on the staff who has to contend with the strange, but ultimately quite affable Dr. Lang, played here by Ben Kingsley. If you've seen Shutter Island, he's basically just doing a different flavour of that in this film, but there's not much wrong with that. There's only so many things that Ben Kingsley does, and he does kind of like weirdly affable and then obviously kind of nuts authority figures very well. Together, they quite ably navigate the setup of the film, and Anderson helps them along with some pretty pedestrian direction. But soon, inevitably, as is given away by the trailer, Sturgess makes his way into the basement and discovers Michael Caine, the actual head of the organisation, and the rest of his staff, who have been imprisoned by the mental patients who are now running the asylum. Hopefully that's not a plot twist. I mean, they literally gave it away on the poster and in the trailer, so... You know, the short story is like from the 1900s, guys. Like, just read better, okay? Jeez. So at this point, when it should be its most exciting, the film just loses its steam. All the mystery and intrigue and kind of hushed tones and subtext that's been carrying the film on is now gone. We end up essentially kind of stuck there. Sturgess wants to help and he wants to leave, but he can't do so without Kate Beckinsale, who isn't willing to leave just yet. And we stay there for like pretty much an hour and a half. This isn't the fault of the actors or even the director, Brad Anderson. It's a scripting problem. It's something that they should have noticed before they made the film, which is that the last two-thirds of the movie aren't very compelling. They're not very interesting. And this is a common fault when you try to adapt a short story into a cinematic feature, because there's just not quite enough plot to fill out the rest of the film. I don't know about you, but I always feel slightly uncomfortable about films set in mental asylums because they tend to use people who are like catatonic and experiencing very deep delusions and then use them for horror, which I think is completely unfair and morally wrong, really, in a work. I do like some stuff set in asylums, like Asylum, which is an Amicus film. It's an anthology horror from the 60s. I love American Horror Story Asylum, and I love Psychoville, which is a British sitcom set in a part in a mental asylum. But in all of those things, they kind of talk about mental illness. They use it as a way to discuss that instead of doing what they sort of fringe around here, and which Anderson has definitely been guilty of before with Session 9, which is probably his best film, which is using mental patients and mental illness as an easy route into horror. And here it even goes to the point of disfigurement as well, making sure that the people who are mentally ill are not just mentally ill but disfigured and they look bad. And I feel like that's wrong. I mean, I feel like there are good ways to do it, but I feel like that's wrong. If you have any opinion on that, please pop it down in the comments below, because I think that's a debate that we really should be having. If you're looking for something to keep you spooked and staying under the covers, there's better things to watch than Stonehurst Asylum. Hope you enjoyed my review.